In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey, everybody, how you doing? Well, that's good. Welcome to PHLY Fly. Bet365. Download the Bet365 app. Use code PHLY365 when you sign up. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. My name is Bill Matz. I'm your director of fun and games for the evening. Joining me today, not only do we have Philly's number one hockey beat writer, Charlie O'Connor, but we have Maddie Campbell from Broad Street Hockey well. You can read her work here at allphly.com. Covers the Phantoms for us, does a ton over at BSH. I guess you're the new flyby herself.
For today.
Yeah, for today at least. But welcome aboard. We have a very fun show planned. Listen, Flyers are off for like 2 weeks. I've been promising we would talk about the Phantoms at some point for like a year. And here we are. Today is the day we are going to do it. But first, we got to have a little fun. Listen, just how's everyone doing? We are celebrating a Super Bowl, 4 Nations break, no games for a couple of weeks for the Flyers. Feels real good right now, doesn't it? I woke up in a great mood today. Feels awesome right now to just be a Philly sports fan. All right.
Oh, were you waiting? I thought you were
going to lay out.
I thought you were turning it into the Tankathon because I assume that's where we were going with this.
That's a good idea. No, I was just laying out. Because
I was waiting for you to transition to Tankathon.
I forgot to sip water before the show started, and I am still dealing with a loss of voice from Sunday.
I'm doing great, Bill. I'm doing really, really well.
It feels real good. And, listen, the very first Tankathon spin I had the Flyers winning it on Monday morning.
Okay.
It hasn't gone so
the
well
vibes
since then.
Just been.
It hasn't gone so well since then. They dropped to 7th on my only spin today, as they did on the show yesterday.
Right.
So we are going to try to get this thing going again and see if we can get the Flyers back into at least the number 2 spot. Although I think I'd rather draft 6 than 2. Quite honestly, that 2 spot, a little cursed for us. So let's do it. Let's do today's daily Tankathon spin. You see it right there. Brenna, spin that wheel.
Hey!
2. Damn it. All right, they jumped from 6 to 2, but yeah. I mean, I guess I'll take it. There's no...
I know that you are petrified of the 2 implications, obviously because of Nolan Patrick. However, in this draft, it would honestly be pretty good to jump to 2 because it seems like the emerging consensus is that Matthew Schaefer, who's a defenseman, is going to go number 1. Now that could change. He's injured right now. Maybe other guys will jump in, but right now it seems like the scouts are in love with Schaefer. That would give the Flyers their choice of the top 2 center prospects in the draft, Michael Misa and James Hagans. Whoever the scouts like better, they would have their pick, most likely assuming Schaefer does go 1. So that would be, given the fact that I think we all agree that center is their biggest long-term need. Not that getting a number 1 defenseman wouldn't be amazing. They could certainly use that too. But if we generally speaking agree that center is their biggest long-term need, 1C, this would give them the opportunity to pick their favorite of the 2 potential 1Cs in this draft.
You know, I'd always rather just take what's left so they don't have to make that decision themselves. But
well, that's what happened for the Flyers in terms of picking between the 2 centers. They got who was left, and who was left wasn't nearly as good as Nico Hischier.
If they were drafting 1, though, it still would have been Nolan Patrick.
I don't know that.
I know it to be 100% true. Do you think Ron Hextall was going to take the dude from Switzerland over the Brandon Wheat King? Come on, Charlie. All right. We have Maddie Campbell here. Of course, she has been writing for us since last year about the Phantoms. She's been with Broad Street Hockey for quite some time. You can read her work at both places. We got to talk some Phantoms because there's actually been feels like for the first time in a while, like some actual call-ups have happened.
Yeah.
We're actually seeing the fruits of the labor in the AHL make its way to the NHL. And with the reports of what could potentially happen at the trade deadline, maybe some more call-ups on the way in the next few weeks. But I just want to start with this year's Phantoms team. They're 22, 18, and 6. They're 15, or they're fifth, not 15th, fifth in the Atlantic. They have about 26 games left. How would you categorize their season thus far, Maddie? Like success, meeting expectations, meh?
I mean, I think it's been pretty wildly inconsistent. Probably it averages out to like, okay, which is, I think we would like to be seeing a little bit more than that, given the caliber of players that they have in the mix down there. But, it's been all right.
That seems like it's the that's kind of the consensus of the Ian Laperrière era there. This is his fourth season as head coach. I don't think anyone's been blown away by the job he's done in terms of overall success, especially in the postseason. But the Flyers seem to believe he is an excellent talent developer. He is good at teaching the young players. What's your assessment of Ian Laperrière?
I mean, the inconsistency is the thing that keeps getting me. It's like, if I've mentioned this a number of times in the reports on the team, is like, a couple of guys will have a big week and then they'll completely drop off the next week. It's just nobody can seem to sustain anything over like longer than a month, which is kind of concerning. I mean, you can point to some guys and say, yeah, they're making strides in some areas, but like, if we could see it keep going, I would feel a little bit more confident that they're not just gonna, fall off a cliff at some point. I feel like anytime something seems to be going well with the team, I'm a little bit still scared that the rug's gonna get pulled out from under me, which isn't a great feeling when, we're deep in the rebuild and this stuff's really starting to matter. Like they really have to figure out their development infrastructure, and I don't feel super confident in it at the moment. Some positives, but, definitely some areas to shore up as well.
So one thing that I hear when I speak with people in the organization, and one of the reasons why they point to Laperrière having done a good job and they're happy with him, is they are of the opinion that when they call guys up, they are ready. They come up and they, generally speaking, make a positive impact. And you're talking guys like Emil Andrae, but even players like Helge Grans, who comes up and at the very least looks like he is capable of holding his own at the NHL level. And they say, that's Lappy. Lappy's teaching them how to be pros. He's teaching them how to succeed when they get to the next level. How much do you buy that?
I mean, it's hard to buy it because so many of those guys, we don't see them over a long span of time. Like, how long was Grans up for? Like a week or so? And it's like, yeah, they're ready to play well over a few game span, but how much of that is like that just got called up adrenaline and then...
Fair.
I wish I had a better answer to that, but I just have not been able to really parse that out.
I guess like where I come from is I'm willing to accept the concerns I have with, like, I think the Phantoms should be playing better based on the talent that they have. They should be maybe not the best team in the AHL, but they should be a team that doesn't have to battle their way into the playoffs. They should be solidly in there. That's always been my view. But I do find that players perform better in the NHL than I think they're going to, based on what I've seen and heard from their play in the AHL. Like talking about like Tyson Forrester, Emil Andrae, guys like that, where they come up and, I've heard, they're okay. They have good games and bad. They're not quite finished products. Then they come up in the NHL and are significantly better than I think they're going to be. And I'm willing to say, maybe there is a method to his madness, in that it's helping guys, even if it's not necessarily helping them maximize their point production in the AHL level, that maybe it is helping them to develop. But the problem with that is, like, you can't prove otherwise. Like, you can't say, well, we know he was better than he would have been if he didn't have Laperrière, because we can't have a time machine and then create a world where Ian Laperrière isn't the coach and then know for sure that the same thing wouldn't have happened had it been somebody else.
Yeah, and that's kind of the one question that sits with me a little bit, is like, were these guys going to be okay regardless because they're the top prospects in the organization? I think if we see over the next few years, like a Samu Tuomaala and Aleksei Gendron, like really figure it out and make the jump to the NHL level and succeed there, then I think I could give Laperrière some more credit, because those are like the more project-y guys that actually are going to take a little bit more developmental work.
And that's kind of where I'm like a little concerned with where we are developmentally as an organization. Like the year prior to Laperrière getting the job, Tyson Forster comes in, 10 goals in 24 games. Like that is a hell of a pace. Now, he goes back to Barrie at one point, and everything's kind of jumbled. But his rookie year, like first full season with the Phantoms, 20 goals. He jumps to the NHL the next year, has 20 goals. Like, I don't know. It seems as if that guy should have more dominated his AHL to be able to then, okay, now he's like a top 6 forward in the NHL. Where was that? Maybe they brought him along to play in a way that maybe doesn't stand out in the A, but when he gets to the NHL, yeah, he can absolutely hold
and I
his
think
own.
that's what they believe.
Yeah.
Now, whether you believe it, that's you
they
can make up
also-
your opinion. But I think that's what the Flyers.
They also believe that like he should have gone in the top half of that draft, and they were lucky to get him in the 20s. And like those guys don't always even play in the AHL. Now with what the Flyers are setting up, 4 second-round picks, later 20s first-round picks from the Avs and Edmonton. These are guys who play in the AHL. Like, there's going to be development necessary. Like, Jet Luchenko probably going to make the jump either next year or the year after straight to the NHL. He's already played up here. Other guys, like, they're going to be projects. How much confidence do you actually have in Ian Laperrière to, like, foster this next generation of, yeah, Emil Andrae looks good. We need all these dudes to hit like Emil Andrae, though.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not feeling super confident at the moment. I guess we'll see where things stand at the end of the season. Yeah. Just it's been so up and down that I'm like, I don't know what's gonna happen next. Yeah.
We've all been critical of Lappy, and sometimes I do think it's a little unfair. Like hell of a player, hell of a depth player in the NHL for a long time. Our only real exposure to him at the NHL level, because Charlie and I say all the time, we kind of have our hands full with the NHL team here. Don't have a ton of time to watch the Phantoms. My impression of him is the only penalty kill that was worse than the Senators' penalty kill that they're in the back of an Uber making fun of is Ian Laperrière's. That's not great. Like, that's not great. And that's okay. Now he's the head coach of the Phantom. Charlie, do you think like maybe it's unfair the way we judge him? Because it's not as if this team is loaded with top end talent, the Phantoms down there. They do have quite a few guys that this team believes is going to contribute in the NHL. Like, are we unfair to Lappy because our exposure to him was like, well, that was a failure?
I don't think it's unfair to be skeptical and even critical of him. I do think that it can go a little too far sometimes, where some people treat him as if he's a blithering idiot, and he's not. Like that's obvious. And at the very least, I think we can all, generally speaking, agree that at the very least, he's not obviously ruining guys down in the AHL.
Yeah,
it's not like they're throwing guys down there who you think are going to be really good, and they completely bust out, and when they play in the NHL, they look overmatched. So at the very least, I think he's competent. But I also don't think it's unfair to look back at the past coaching work that he's done, not even necessarily on the Phantoms, but also on the Flyers, and say that when he was an NHL assistant coach, by every objective measure, he didn't do a good job at it. That
didn't go well.
We have stone cold evidence that he wasn't good at that job. Now, that doesn't mean that he can't be good as an AHL coach. It doesn't mean he can't be good as a talent developer. He was a development coach before he became an AHL head coach. The main point of skepticism I think I have with Lappy, because I think I'm a little bit more optimistic about his talent developing ability than maybe you are, but I am very skeptical of his ability to coach consistently successful X's and O's. That I think is like, I'm willing to accept that he might have talent development ability, but I look at the team they have and I say, is he the kind of guy who can actually coach a winning hockey team? Maybe he can develop into guys individually, but the Phantoms, in my mind, should be better than they are. And this is a guy who, going into last season when he took the job, like, he had no experience as a head coach at any level. And I was very skeptical of, is he going to be able to actually do this?
Yeah, that's fair. And I think also coming off of the Scott Gordon years with the team, where he was very clearly a strong X's and O's guy, even when he came up to the Flyers, you could tell that from his immediate post game comments. It's a big difference. We'll see. I think a big question I have into the next few years, because I think he's got one more year on his contract after this one, is the player development side enough?
Right.
Do they want a coach who is going to be able to coach up a good team? Do they want their prospects to also be winning?
Yeah. And it's a reasonable question. How important is it to be in a winning environment down in the minors? At least to this point, they haven't seemed to be prioritizing that. But there's an argument to be made. It could be quite valuable.
And I look at what's going on in Washington right now, and granted, they have the Hershey Bears. Right. The Hershey Bears probably have a bigger budget than the Nashville Predators.
Yeah, they're the gold standard.
They could be a standalone team without an NHL affiliate, and we're still winning, and they can go out and just get every Anthony Richard in the league and be like, yeah, man, we have 3 30-goal scorers. We win, but I look at what's happening with the Washington Capitals right now, this little rebuild on the fly that they've done. Alex Ovechkin didn't get any younger. Now he's playing like he has, but all of a sudden they're going to win the freaking President's Trophy at the pace that they're going. And Hershey, they've been to 3 straight Calder Cups. I think they won 2 of them. Same thing kind of in Tampa. You see this. They went from the Syracuse Cruncher, whoever the hell it was, being real good with John Cooper, and now all those guys come up, and they've been good for a decade. I kind of feel like winning might be a little more important than it was, back when I followed the Phantoms. It was all Quad A guys. The AHL was barely a developmental league at that point. It was kind of just, we need more revenue for our NHL teams. I do worry a little. This rebuild is built around, hey, man, this is why we're not tearing it all the way down. We want to win and play important games. I guess with the way the AHL is structured, the Phantoms will be in the playoffs.
Yeah.
But they don't really seem to have an actual chance to win a Calder Cup.
No. Who knows? They were doing pretty much exactly the same thing last year, and they went on a pretty insane, unexplainable playoff run. So, truly, you never know what's going to happen in the postseason in that league. But, I think you're right. Broad strokes wise.
They could be getting the boost of a Jellichenko at the end of the season, too.
There we go.
That could happen. Could happen. Before we go any further, I want to take a minute to tell you about Factor Meal Kits and a couple of our sponsors here. Are you ready to optimize your nutrition this year? Factor has chef-made gourmet meals that make eating easy. They're dietitian approved and ready to heat and eat in 2 minutes. So you can fuel right and feel great no matter what life throws at you. Factor arrives fresh and fully prepared, perfect for any active, busy lifestyle. You can lose up to 8 pounds in 8 weeks with Factor Keto meals based on a randomized controlled clinical trial with Factor Keto. Results will vary depending on diet and exercise, but you have 40 options across 8 dietary preferences on the menu each week. It's easy to pick meals tailored to your goals. You can choose from preferences like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and the aforementioned Keto. My Factor box just came this morning. Showed up. I'm very excited to go home, check out what arrived, and I'll be telling you all about it this week. But I am a big fan of Factor. It just makes eating easier. Like they say right at the top, man. You know how busy everybody is. Now, maybe not me, but Ava has a ton to do. Charlie, he's always working. Factor makes everything super simple for you, and it arrives right at your doorstep. Couldn't be easier. So eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/Flyers50off and use code Flyers50off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code Flyers50off at factormeals.com/Flyers50OFF to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. And while we're here, why didn't I tell you about Golden Nugget Jewelers? That's right. Fam, listen, I know we're real excited for that parade Friday. We're real excited for this great football team of ours to get their rings. But you can't forget about what other rings you might need to be buying on Friday. That's why you need to go to Golden Nugget Jewelers, where Philly gets engaged. They've been in the same location at 8th and Chestnut for 30 years. They've been a family-owned and operated business. People from all over show up to Golden Nugget because they have the experts and the best price. And remember, Valentine's Day, it's parade day. Don't forget. Do not forget. And if you decide, this is the perfect day to get engaged, well, you receive a final cleaning and written appraisal with every engagement ring purchase. Golden Nugget Jewelers, you deserve an expert and the best price. Where Philly gets engaged, visit goldennuggetjewelry.com today to learn more. All right, I'm going to talk about some individual players, some of whom have got a shot this year, some other guys we may be looking forward to in the near future. I want to start with everybody's favorite call-up. Everybody loves Emil Andrae. The outrage from him getting sent down the last time seems to still be permeating. Oh, he should have never been sent down.
That's what I say.
People are still.
I say that quite a lot, actually.
People are still mad about it to the point where when a bunch of guys got sent down for 4 Nations break, they're like, why are they sending it? So he can play. So he can play. Everyone calm down. They're off for 2 weeks. But from, let's say, last year, Maddie, up until now, what sort of strides has Emil Andrae made? Because from what we saw in the NHL last year, we saw a guy who had some puck skills, but was clearly in over his head. To this year, this guy's a top 4 NHL defenseman. Like, he still has a ways to go, but looks pretty damn good. What have you seen over the last year of Emil Andrae's career?
Yeah, I think the big thing for him has been limiting some of the big mistakes that he's been making with the puck. Now, just given the style of play that he plays, you're always going to get a little bit of risk, and that's what makes him effective and fun. But some of the mistakes he was making were just like, we don't need to be making like quite as aggressive of a play there. We're seeing less of that now. I mean, he hasn't had a perfect run of play down with the Phantoms. He's had some like pretty brutal games, but on the whole, I would say much more stable in his play. The offense is still there. That's clicking well. That wasn't ever really a question, but I think settling down the defensive side and the play with the puck has been a big area of improvement there.
Yeah, I think where I'm at with Andrae, and obviously I don't get to watch him in the AHL basically ever. You do. So I want to throw out where I'm at with him and have you tell me if I'm wrong.
Great.
My view is that I feel like he's at the stage of his career where he should be learning up at the NHL level what he can and can't get away with at the NHL level, and having him continue to do that at the AHL level is just kind of a waste of everyone's time. Not that he can't improve. Everybody could always get better, especially when you're in your early 20s. But to me, I don't think it'll help him to learn, well, I can do this in the AHL, and then have to relearn, well, I can't do it in the NHL. Like, if he can hold his own at the NHL level, and we clearly see he can, why not have him do the rest of his learning there as long as he's not getting crushed and he's shown that he can do it without getting crushed? That's my view, but I don't know if you disagree based on what you've seen him do down at the AHL level.
No, I completely agree. It kind of feels like at this point he's just tinkering with his game a little bit at the AHL level, and even the first weekend he was back, I asked Lappy, like, well, what are your expectations for, however long he's down here? And he's like, just for him to be himself. I'm like, yeah.
Fair.
Yeah. He should be up, and yeah.
My biggest concern with Emil Andrae at the NHL level is at his size, he takes a ton of hits.
Yeah.
I think you can play in the NHL at this size. It's pretty obvious he's effective when he's in there. But I do fear he's going to get killed because he doesn't seem to have enough fear. Like, he doesn't, which is great. Like, that is an excellent trait. But you need to know that when big thing hits little thing, it's going to hurt really bad. Like, how is he working on in the AHL? Is he getting crushed as much as maybe I've seen him get hit in the NHL? Or is he's just a little slicker? He's working on that anticipation because he's only been up for a few games since the last recall. Like, was that an issue in the AHL as well? Just him getting hit so much?
Honestly, now that I'm thinking about it, no. I don't remember him getting blown up as many times as he seems to have while he's been up with the Flyers. I don't know what's up there. Yeah, I feel that. I feel that concern, but I do kind of wonder if that's a thing that another thing that he just has to kind of work through at this level, figure out how to, which hits he should be taking, which he can, probably be trying to duck a little bit. Because it's not as major of an issue down in the AHL for whatever reason.
And that, like, the speed of the game, the style of play, as much as I don't want him getting crushed in the NHL, well, if it's not happening down there, then he can't get better at avoiding it down there. Like, that's the thing is, I guess we're just going to have to risk it. Like, all right, you need to learn this at the NHL level, and you might take a couple extra hits, but hopefully that eventually teaches you to get out of there a little sooner, make your plays a little bit quicker, have a little bit more urgency with the puck.
And that's always what these guys have to learn.
Yeah.
Like, if there's two things, when I have my bi-yearly interviews with Brent Flair, and really this is the case for pretty much any talent evaluator, scout, development guy, the two things you hear about almost every single prospect who hasn't yet established himself at the NHL level about, well, what do they need to work on? It's you need to get bigger and you need to play with more pace. Those are the two things that you always hear about everybody. And it's probably because, you know what? Even NHLers could theoretically get bigger and play with more pace because the faster you play, the more effective you're going to be. But just going by the way things are in juniors, we saw it with Morgan Frost for years. Morgan Frost spent his entire junior career racking up points, playing at a snail's pace, even though he could skate. It was because he didn't have to. It was because the defensemen were not that fast, so he didn't have to play fast to get by them. The forwards don't back check, so he didn't have to worry about catching people from behind, people catching him from behind. And then at the NHL level and even the pro level, it's like, oh, people back check here. And they're generally speaking all at least decent skaters for a pro level standpoint. And then boom, you need to learn it. So with Andre, I would like Andre to play with more pace, but I don't think he plays slow, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
I think his pace is good. It's sometimes like the decision making and the
Egerson needs to play with more pace.
Yeah,
still.
Like
Andre to be plays with decent pace.
I think it's more his decision making and his when you're gonna make that breakout pass, keep your feet moving though. There's no need to be stationary. It's much easier to hit a still target than it is a moving one. But I really think Andre has a high ceiling in terms of a power play quarterback and just a guy in your top four who can help move the puck. Because one of the guys we're going to get to in a minute, like Hunter McDonald, all right, I really like the big physicality, but we're going to need to offset that a little bit. And I know right now the Flyers defense shading a little smaller, but you need those guys too. But I want to talk about Rodrigo Abols now because I just feel like when I was reading some of your pieces, I didn't necessarily know if I was reading about an NHL player there. And I've been pleasantly surprised with what we've seen out of him in his brief call-up in this last few weeks here. What were you seeing out of Rodrigo that made you think oh yeah, he could maybe be a guy that gets called up at some point?
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of a perfect depth fill-in type player. Doesn't play super high event, although certainly we've seen some offensive capabilities there. But, he's going to be the kind of player who steps in, takes care of his sort of detailsy play. He's been really good defensively for the Phantoms so far this season. And, he just does everything that's asked of him. It's not flashy all the time, but, he's doing his job. And you love to see that. I don't know if he's going to be able to maintain this over a longer stretch of games at the NHL level, but he's been great with, when he's been called upon here.
What, because the two guys that I have kind of lumped in my head because of how they both joined the organization were Abols and Oscar Eklund. Mm-hmm. It seems like Abols has kind of left Eklund in the dust.
Yeah.
Is that what you see down there too?
Yeah, I would say so. It's just it hasn't really come together for Eklund. And I mean, there's still a good bit of season left. He might pick up steam as we go here, but yeah, it's not quite clicking. He kind of disappears for me a little bit, honestly, in some of these games, but yeah, it's still early-ish. But
when I think about the kinds of guys who the Flyers have called up and they've looked at least decent for those short periods of time like we've seen, like, okay, Rodrigo maybe, again, low event guy, Jacob Gaucher, more of the, good two-way. Is this maybe the limitation of Ian Laperrière? Like, guys who can play the role of him, he can get ready for the NHL like nobody's business, but maybe guys with the more dynamic upside, like in will excel. Yeah, it's not the same. Like, do you think that's a limitation of Ian Laperrière's?
It could be. I mean, part of the limitation with those two players, Abols and Gaucher, are just they're not very fast. Like the foot speed is going to hold them back no matter what at the next level. And I think we started to see that a little bit with Gaucher in his last game. Yeah. But yeah, I think that's a good question of how well is he able to develop the more high skill guys. I think you look at someone like Tuomaala and how he's been a little bit lagging behind some of his peers. And yeah, it's a valid question for sure.
Does he still, because the guy who comes to mind in this case is Hayden Hodgson, a guy who Laperrière basically was the reason why he got an NHL contract. It was probably that and the combination of Lappy loving him, and then the Flyers seeing Tanner Jeannot do cool things for Nashville and being like, we want that guy. Yeah. Let's try to get our own Tanner Jeannot. But one thing that came out of that, especially after John Tortorella, the next camp, basically was just like, this dude can't play. Like, what are you even thinking? Yeah. It was the concern that Lappy falling in love with these guys that aren't actually that good, and then the organization invests in them because Lappy falls in love with them, and then they end up they burned a contract or they wasted developmental time on guys that just don't have it because they play the way Lappy wants guys to play. Has that gotten to be less of a concern, or is it still a concern?
I would say a little bit of a concern for sure. I did have that same thought when they signed Gaucher a little bit. Now, they also really need center depth in the organization, so I think that certainly played a part in at least that signing decision. But he's very much Lappy's boy, so him getting a contract very much had shades of the Hodgson situation.
But then you have like the flip side of it, where his first year coaching, he loved Elliot Desnoyers, and Desnoyers had the big surprising breakout where he scored points, probably more than I think anybody really expected him to score at the pro level. And then ever since then, both last year and this year, Desnoyers' offense is gone. My understanding is he's been playing better this year than he did last year, but still not to the level of that first year overall. Like, what's going on there with him?
I mean, he was shooting at like 40% or something insane in his first season. That really helps. I think he's just kind of come back to earth a little bit. Now, I do feel like he's getting a little bit unlucky. But, he's another guy who's like, he's really on for a few weeks and he's playing up in the lineup. He's getting big minutes with more skilled line mates and he's profiting basically from that. And then he drops off a little bit, fewer minutes. He might be healthy scratch. He just can't really string it together. And I do wonder how much of that is like, is this the real Elliot Desnoyers that we probably should have been expecting the whole time? Is like there a confidence thing that he's trying to work through because things aren't going as well for him as he would like to see or might have expected? I'm not really sure. I'm not in a position to say what, but it's been a weird year for him for sure.
Well, because it's just that he was so much one of Lappy's guys. And that's why it was weird to me, especially when he fell off as much as he did, because you figured, well, Lappy loves this guy. He's just going to keep feeding him ice time. He's going to keep feeding him the big roles. And then suddenly you're looking at his numbers and he has like 6 goals in April.
I think, to that, he definitely has his favorites, but I think he is pretty fair with how he's distributing his ice time, at least. And that's something I think has been better this season. Last year was a little frustrating where it seemed like he had his vets, he had his guys, and he was giving them a ton of minutes, even though they weren't playing very well. And then he was coming in post-game and being like, I don't know what's going on here. Like, guys are not playing up to expectations. Like, okay, so maybe give someone else some more time to work with. Like, buddy, you make the line ups here. But I think
we're all looking for the guy who did this.
Better this year for sure, though.
I find Aleksei Kolosov's season so fascinating. Now, it's not like he's been able to like establish himself with the AHL because of the up and down nature. think he's been there, and then they bring him back up, and they're on the All-Star break, so he's up again. He's only played 7 games for the Phantoms this year, but you look at it, and his numbers are almost exactly the same as they are in the NHL. And just looking at, he's had 1 game with the Phantoms with a save percentage over 900. He's had 2 where he's given up fewer than 4 goals. How do you evaluate what the hell's going on with Aleksei Kolosov when his playing time's been so inconsistent? So it's almost understandable, but also he thinks he's NHL ready, and it's like, buddy, you're bad in the AHL. How have you evaluated him thus far?
Yeah, that's been a tough one because, like, I keep thinking about the last time he was sent back down. His first 2 games back were rough. He was put in some not great positions where there was like a shorthanded breakaway and another play where everybody just sort of forgot what they were doing in front of the net. Not making things easy on him for sure. But, he still has these flashes where it's like he seems like he's kind of struggling with his reads. Things are coming at him a little fast. And I do wonder if all of the up and down and just not getting a lot of playing time is hurting him in that regard, because his 3rd game since he was back with the Phantoms, he was way better. I think that was a 2 goals against start. Looked much more settled. Yeah, I mean, I know that he thinks he's ready and he wants to be in the NHL, but like, I think he would really benefit if they could just leave him alone, leave him with the Phantoms, let him play so he can settle down a little bit.
Yeah, it's a tough situation though, because if it truly is, if you try to send me down for the entire season, I'm going to go back home because of pressure, because of what I think of myself, things like that, then I understand why they've decided that this is better than that alternative. But also, if what they're doing now is helping to stun his development, then there's not a good solution here.
Yeah, for sure.
Just looking at the goaltending as a whole in Lehigh Valley, Cal Peterson getting a majority of the games. He's played 24. No one else has played more than 11. Not going great for Cal either.
He's banged up now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's going to be out for a couple months with a lower body thing.
Good for him. So he's tired of paying for lunches. Now, how would you is there any goaltender that's really stood out? It looks like Parker Gagan. He was decent last year. His numbers this year have carried over. How have any goalies really been like, ooh, there might be something here?
Maybe not that much, but I think everybody's been pretty fine, which, is maybe not quite what we were expecting given just everything going on with their situation. Yeah, I mean, everybody's had a few tough games where you're like, Cal Peterson's really having a Cal Peterson game down here. But, I think looking at the results on the season, standings-wise, points-wise, that's one where you could say maybe goaltending is hurting them here because they should be doing better than they are. Goaltending's been fine, honestly.
It hasn't been the problem.
Yeah, definitely.
Fair.
Well, that must be nice. Hunter McDonald is probably my favorite of the prospects because the guy's gigantic, and Keith Jones and the organization just seem to love the physical element he brings. You can't teach a guy being 7 foot tall.
Sure.
That's just not something. It's not something you see every day. And I do think there's something too. You need a little bit bigger of a defensive core to really compete in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Yes, if you have Cale Makar, sure, but the Flyers don't, and the chances of getting the next Bobby Orr seem pretty low because he's already there. Quinn Hughes already in Vancouver. Don't really see how you can get those guys.
Yeah.
So maybe build up a big physical defense, at least in part. I want to see Hunter McDonald up here. How has he done this year in his true rookie season in the A?
It's been okay. I mean, I think it was on a broadcast recently where somebody said that the reports that the Flyers are getting on him have been really, really good. And I'm like, I don't know about that. I mean, something I noticed early in the season is that things were happening a little bit too fast for him. He was struggling with being a little bit more decisive with the puck, not really knowing what to do in the defensive zone. And he's made some strides there, but he's still, even halfway through the season and beyond, looks a little bit lost at times. He's still kind of struggling physically too. Not that he's not being physical enough. The opposite, really. He's like still trying to find the line of what's a good amount of physicality and what's just illegal and gonna get me in the box and put the team on the penalty kill, and a penalty kill that has not been awesome this year. And I think that's been
Ian Laperrière, bad penalty kill. Where have we heard this before?
69 penalty minutes in 45 games.
Yeah.
So pretty nice number of PIMs there. But in 45 games, so this is going to be a longer term project, as much as it's like, oh, well, he's Risto's replacement. If he gets traded at the deadline, Rasmus Ristolainen, probably no Hunter McDonald as the immediate replacement.
I mean, if they're hearing that he's doing really well down there and they really love him, maybe we see him, but I would not do it. I think he's going to be a longer term project. I've kind of always felt that way. Like, I was never super blown away by him at the college level. So I don't know. I think it's going to be a longer term thing, but who knows?
But here's my question about McDonald, because I'm going back to the rookie games.
Mm-hmm.
Both of those I saw in person. And we had gotten the reports from the organization about Hunter McDonald was basically just that he's this defensive stud. He kills plays so well. He's going to be so good in the defensive zone that, you're not going to expect him to score many points. But defensive zone, he's going to be great. In those rookie games, I thought he was exploited multiple times defensively without the puck and made a lot more plays with the puck than I expected he ever would.
Yeah.
And I kind of came away confused of, was this just a one-time thing where, he struggled at what he's usually good at and was good at what he usually struggles with? Or have we underrated his puck work and overrated his defense work? Is that extended into the season?
I mean, the offense really isn't clicking for him in a huge way. There have been a few plays where he's been pretty aggressive up in the play, and I think he's had at least one goal where he's been like down in the zone, which was like really fun and exciting. But he's trying to shoot a lot from the point, which guys like Samson and Grans are both doing and finding some success with. He can't get shots through. He's really struggling to find lanes, and he's just a ton of his shots are getting blocked. So maybe if he figures that out.
That's been one of my biggest pet peeves at the NHL level, is that no one can get a shot through.
Yeah.
When Emil Andrae had that one-timer that Forster tipped home on the power play, I was like, this might be the first time all year this has happened. So he'll fit in at least there. But since we're talking some defensemen, let's talk about Helge Grans, because I was pleasantly surprised. When he comes over in the LA trade, it's, he's a guy. We'll see. Sounds a lot like a Robert Haig. Like, it could be something, bottom of the lineup player maybe, and starting to just hear his name a little more, just in terms of and organization still kind of views him as somebody who could be here. What's he done at the AHL level this year that's making them think there's maybe LA gave up on this guy a little too soon?
Yeah, he's just sort of starting to figure it out in all areas. I mean, this is his 4th season in the AHL, and he's, 22, 23? I think that's something that kind of gets lost when...
23 in May.
Yeah, okay. He started in the AHL so early because, he's not hindered by the CHL situation. And, for some guys, that's an easy jump. For a lot of them, it takes a lot of figuring out that league. So I think on the whole, he's just been like a little bit more solid in pretty much every area. Defensively, not making quite so many mistakes in the defensive zone. A little bit better with moving the puck. Like I mentioned, doing better at getting shots through from the point. I don't know off the top of my head how many goals he had, but more than I was expecting heading into the season, certainly. I don't know if he's like a long-term option with the organization, but, certainly making some positive strides.
So am I wrong to theorize?
I got to cut you off, Charlie. I'm sorry.
Okay,
I didn't realize the time.
Go for it.
Before we go any further, I thought we had like 4 minutes still, but no. Before we go any further, I got to tell you about TrueMark Financial Credit Union. Maybe all that holiday shopping has you still holding a credit card balance. Maybe you just took a little trip to New Orleans that was ill-advised. Maybe you're loading up on big game merch now that we are the champions. Whatever it is, if you have a credit card balance weighing you down, wouldn't you like to be able to pay it off a little faster and with zero interest until 2026? That sounds pretty nice, right? Well, with TrueMark Financial, you can, because they're offering zero interest on balance transfers for 12 months. So all your payments can go towards reducing your balance, not just covering interest. Here's what you got to do. Transfer your existing credit card balance from another institution to a TrueMark Financial Visa credit card and take advantage of this amazing offer before the end of this month. Now, you know I can't pronounce this month, but we all know what month we're in. It ends on the 28th. That's how long you have to apply. And whether you're interested in earning rewards, cash back, or simply just prefer a low rate for everyday purchases, TrueMark Financial can choose the credit card that best fits your financial needs. So visit TrueMark.com/compare for full details and to apply today. TrueMark Financial, federally insured by the NCUA, equal opportunity lender. Terms and conditions apply. All loans subject to approval. 3% balance transfer fee applies. Standard rates apply after the promotional rate. And while we're here, I got to tell you about our friends at Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. I've been telling you about them all season. But they have over 90 million users worldwide. Bet365 streams over 780,000 events each year. And one of the things I love, the early payout offers across the NBA, NFL, NHL, and Major League Baseball. Say you're betting on some Four Nations face-off coming up. Your team goes up 3-0. Guess what? It's over. You get paid. Whether or not they maintain that lead, as soon as you, the team that you bet on, money line, picks up a 3-goal lead, you get paid. It's amazing. If you're smart, maybe turn around, bet the other end. If it looks like maybe they got a little lucky, you get paid twice. Who the hell knows? It's that simple at Bet365. And right now we have breaking news from Bet365. New customers now get $150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Win or lose. Sign up, use the code PHLY365, deposit $10, and place a bet for $5 to get $150 in bonus bets, whether your bet wins or loses. Bonus bets can be used on the spread, total, player props, futures, and more. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 or older and physically located in PA. If you or somebody knows a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Go ahead, Charlie.
Okay, no, so this was just a general question. We were talking a little bit earlier, Bill, you were, about the idea of Hunter McDonald, being a potential option if Ristolainen were to get traded at the deadline. Am I wrong to suspect that if Ristolainen were to get traded, that Grans might be the more likely call-up option from a hand-in-this standpoint and just from an overall readiness standpoint?
I would agree, yeah, especially since we've already seen him this season as well. He's relatively familiar with the situation up at the NHL level. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw him called up over McDonald or a Samson if Risto gets moved.
Does Grans bring any physicality? Because we didn't really see much of it at the NHL level.
He's like 6'3", 205. He's basically the same size as Hunter
But
McDonald.
obviously a lot of that is mentality. Yeah. Like Risto has the mentality that he wants to hit people. Does Grans play physical at all?
He's not really an overly physical player, I wouldn't say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair.
I want to talk about Ethan Samson. I want to talk to Samson. I was pretty impressed with him in the rookie games. Everything we saw up in Lehigh Valley for the debut of Luchenko. You're there for Matvei Michkov, and I was like, I kind of like this dude. Seems pretty good. What have you seen out of Ethan Samson this season?
Yeah, I'm just positive progress on the whole. He was not a regular in the lineup really last season, and he's pretty much cemented a top of the lineup position for himself this year, which has been nice. He's getting some minutes on the power play, looks pretty passable there, doing well. He's still a little bit, I keep saying inconsistent, but he's been a little inconsistent as well. But he's still so young, and we kind of always knew that he was going to be, another project-y guy. He wasn't coming in with a ton of hype or cachet as a prospect. But yeah, I think maybe not the flashiest guy, but he's been pretty solid for the team as a whole.
Want to ask you about another guy who I would say had fans excited to a very high degree a few years ago, especially that shortened season when the juniors guys were allowed to play in the AHL. Obviously a weaker AHL, but Zayde Wisdom got a lot of hype off of that draft. He was an exciting guy, just seemed like a really good guy to root for. Plays in the AHL, does quite well. Then it just seemed like his career kind of not even stagnated, just dropped, that he just was having trouble even sticking at the AHL level. This season, the numbers look good, and you've written about him in your reports. He is a pending RFA at the end of this year. Where do you think they're at with him? Like, do you think he's done enough to keep himself in the organizational mix, or is this sort of like a last gasp where he's more or less playing for a contract from another team now?
It's a really good question. I mean, I know they like him, so I wouldn't be surprised if they keep him around, but I think the big thing with him was he was really successful that first year that was like the COVID year, and the level of competition in the AHL wasn't as high as it normally is because of, the best players are on the taxi squads. They're not really around. And then he comes back and he is put in a position where he's got to figure out how to play a depth role, which is probably more what would be expected of him at the NHL level. He's not put in a ton of scoring positions, and he's just really struggling to kind of reshape his game and figure that out. This year's been kind of weird because, he's been more successful, but he's also getting bigger minutes with their more skill guys. I think when they put him in depth roles, he's doing better, but I still don't know, where he stands sort of as far as his projection goes. Is he an NHL option in that capacity? I don't really know. I don't know if they view him that way anymore either, but if nothing else, it's been nice to see him getting his confidence back and being a little bit more productive, because he's still a great story.
So it sounds kind of like, because for those who don't know, Zayde Wisdom kind of got not his start, obviously, but he got on the map because he was Shane Wright's line mate.
Right.
And the idea was okay, well, how much of this is him being a product of Shane Wright, and how much of it is that he's actually a really productive junior level player? Does that imply that the conundrum here is that he's a guy who plays well off skill guys, but might not have the ability to do that at the NHL level anyway?
Kind of. I mean, he's got some offensive ability, but I don't really view him as a driver on the line.
Okay.
Now, he's someone who supports the skill players really well. He's getting in the corners, he's winning battles, doing all the things that Lappy loves to see. But, you do wonder how successful he would be playing on an NHL fourth line where, there's just not as many minutes to go around, and the players he's working with are, maybe not as skilled.
Yeah, it's just interesting to think okay, there's something there, but if the only role he could be successful in is a middle six role, but he doesn't have the skill to earn his way up an NHL lineup to get in that role, then where would he fit in an NHL lineup? That sounds like kind of where we're at with him.
Yeah.
What if they just go and get Shane Wright? Problem solved.
There you go.
There's a prospect that I was very excited just to see how it would go, because the way the Flyers acquired Massimo Rizzo, his scoring numbers in college look pretty nice. Why is Carolina just giving up on this guy for Tony DeAngelo? And then it's this isn't even a trade now. We had to buy him out, and they were just here, take him anyway. And then the way Rizzo's AHL career starts, you go, oh, that's why. But since mid-December, he's been pretty damn good for the Phantoms. All of his points, he's got, 13 points in 29 games, but they're all since December 18th. Looks like it's been going pretty well from a scoring standpoint for Rizzo. Back on the map as a prospect, maybe it's going to be a little bit, but he could play in the NHL one day. How do you feel about him as a one-day making it kind of guy?
I think he's certainly an option. I mean, it's been a really probably suboptimal year for him. Right after the rookie games, right after training camp, he had to get an appendectomy, and he was out for 2 months. So it's taken him a while to really get going. But yeah, I mean, he's finally, it seems like, starting to figure it out. I don't have a great sense of like where he's at, what he's going to do the rest of the season, because he's only just started to like be a little bit more involved in play and see his scoring start to come together again. But, you know, they seem to like him. Yeah.
Skill set wise, what is it he does well? Like, since the scoring has really picked up, like, how has he created his chances? Is he like living off the rush? Is he a give and go kind of guy? Is he getting tips in front? Like, what kind of player is Massimo Rizzo?
I mean, they're getting a little bit of rush offense from him. He's not an overly speedy guy, but he can definitely create when, you know, he's got the space open for him. More often you're seeing him setting up kind of right in front of the net, per my tracking data that I should have in front of me right now, but I don't. Up until this point, he hasn't been creating like a ton of chances, but all of them are very good. So,
yeah, and definitely for anyone who is a diehard, Maddie did her deep dive on her tracking project for the Phantoms last week, I believe, is when it's published. So it's on our website, and if you're not a diehard, become a freaking diehard.
Do it.
The content is so
And
good.
right now, like, you only have a few hours left. I think it's like 7 hours to take advantage of our We Are the Champions limited time offer. $48 get you in for the year. So you won't even have to resubscribe until we're celebrating the next championship on Broad Street. Sign up right now. You get all of the premium content from our all-star cast of writers. You get a discount on merch and events. And boy, do we have some great merch for you right now. The Gold Standard Collection, check it out. You get access to the Discord. There's no reason not to become a diehard to take advantage of all these benefits. My God, Charlie, which one's your favorite? Because mine's the World Effing Champs. Ooh. And it's only a little bit because when Eric was designing it, he sent it to me to ask what I thought.
I love that. I don't know. I think I might like the World Champions one. I dig it. It's sleek. It's clean.
It is clean. I do like that one as well.
I dig it.
I might have to go back and order more. This is not going to be...
We're supposed to be convincing the viewers and readers to buy the stuff. We're not supposed to be buying all of our own stuff.
I will do that by wearing it on the show once it arrives.
Okay.
All right. So that's basically it. How many super chats do we have, Bryn? 3. All right. Perfect. All right. Let's hit those super chats. This one from, I always want to call this guy David Wright, but it's David Weigert. Will we see any junior players in Lehigh Valley this year? That's a good question. Do we have like a good idea of like the players who are graduating and might be heading to the AHL?
I think the one guy who I would expect to see in the AHL at the end of the year is Luchenko. I have my top 20 prospect series coming out starting tomorrow.
Ooh,
and then that'll be followed with 2 interviews, 2 parts of an interview with Brent Flair, Flyers assistant general manager, who runs the draft and also is heavily involved in prospect development and keeping track of these guys after they're drafted. I specifically asked about Luchenko, and I know there are people who would like to see him potentially play in NHL games. I'm not sure that is on their radar, but I do think that it's very much on their radar that if his season ends, you know, they either don't make the playoffs or they make the playoffs and lose very early, and there's still AHL games to go. I think there is a very good chance he appears in games for the Phantoms at the end of the season and into the AHL playoffs, assuming the Phantoms get there and go on a little bit of a run.
That would be interesting to see, and it's funny that NHL not on their radar after he made the team a few months ago, and we just got rid of one of our centers, and there's a really good chance we'll be getting rid of another one. But we'll see how that goes. Good question there, David. All right, from JH says, just sending some love and appreciation for having Madeline on the team now. Love that there's someone to summarize the happening with the Phantoms. Absolutely. Listen, I've wanted to do this for like a year, and this is what happens when Bill's in charge of stuff. It takes a year to figure things out. But listen, we did it, and thanks for watching, JH. Always one of our dedicated super chatters.
Thank you.
And from Millerman4,
another
says,
Maddie fan.
Enjoy reading your articles, Maddie. So we have a lot of Maddie fans. And listen, sign up to be a diehard so you can read it. You just heard about all the stuff Charlie has coming out. Madeline does our Phantoms reports. It's also, as much as I don't talk about the Phantoms on this show because I try not to sound like an imbecile and talk about things I don't really know about. We have the coverage on allphly.com, so check it out. Sign up to be a diehard. $48 for the year. All right, and we appreciate those of you watching on TV. Head over to allphly.com for more of the show. And what's more of the show is we're wrapping it up. That's right. That is all the time we have for you on PHLY Flyers, presented by Bet365. Download the Bet365 app. Use code PHLY365 when you sign up. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. We'll be back tomorrow. Regularly scheduled 4 o'clock show. Man, this no post-game stuff is just going real well for me right now. I love it. All right. So make sure you're following us right here on the YouTube page. Set that reminder bell so you never miss a live show. Follow us on Twitter at PHLY_Flyers, and follow the podcast wherever you get those. Just search PHLY Flyers. All right, that's it. I am Bill Matz. That is Charlie O'Campbell. That is Charlie O'Connor. That is Madeline O'Connor. That's Maddie Campbell. Just take it easy. I'm done.
We all silly like the mayor.